You are listening to the BU Podcast with Michael Arrington. We discuss social justice, childhood trauma, current events, hip-hop, and so much more. Now, here's your host, Michael Arrington.
Yo, what's good, y'all? It's your boy Mike Arrington, the BU Podcast. We're back. Wanted to let you know about my guest coming on today. Her name is Wanja. She's from Germany. She's a hip hop curator, promoter, DJ, a plethora of things, man. But her and I always have some real rich conversations on social media, and wanted to kind of take that conversation, to my podcast, but kind of really sit down and formally have a discussion with her. Most of our conversations is really organic. Me responding to a post of hers or her responding to a post of mine. But she's been very integral in different parts of my career with promoting some of my content via social media to Europe. She's kind of like my go-to when it comes to putting out a record and kind of getting the word out to my fan base that is in Europe. She's really, really dope. She's got a really big following, man. I wish you guys would follow her on social media, man. And because she's really, really dope and has really, really good, valuable perspective. Not just from a European perspective, but from a woman in hip hop and a voice in hip hop that I think is vital and important. So I think that's always dope to get that perspective, just because, different perspectives are always vital in this game. But so I wanted to bring her on the podcast and kind of, have a formal conversation with her regarding hip hop and mental health and things of that nature. So we'll get into that in a minute. But I wanted to share a story from one of my students that I had this past school year. She left me a really dope note, and I just kind of wanted to share some of the things that I do and some of the, and some of the work that I've done with students. Like, one of my students came to me and she broke down. I mean, ugly cry, yo. Like, it was, it was mascara running snot, the whole hookup. But she said, "Mr. Arrington, I wanted to thank you for annoying me every day. Thank you for not giving up on me. When I met you, when I had to meet you, I was done. I wanted to give up. Every day you bring all this positivity and shit, and I just wanted to say thank you. I keep what you tell me in my head, especially when I'm feeling down. Even when I made mistakes, you were still there. I never had a father. I never knew what having one felt like. But you're that for me now. I had to burden you with that responsibility, but I look up to you. You're one of the coolest people I ever met, and you care so much about us. I made the honor roll because of you. When I told you, you were so happy, and I knew I made you proud. I'm going to continue that. Thank you for everything. Have a wonderful break, and be ready to rock with us next year." To hear that, man, was humbling for me. You never really know the impact you make on people. I try to live every day to the fullest, man. I try to pour as much hope into people that I'm around whenever I can. And this kid in particular, she's got a really, really, really bad situation at home. She comes from a very, very, negative environment. A lot of childhood trauma, a lot of childhood abuse. And for this kid to show this level of vulnerability, one, is a lot. But it means a lot to me because I know what that means. I mean, she feels safe with me to be able to express these types of vulnerabilities, man. And I think that's very, very important. But I don't take what I do for granted. And to hear this kind of feedback is humbling for me, man. But I thought I'd share it with you guys to kind of give you a perspective of kind of what I do. It's a piece of what I do every day in dealing with young minds and young people. I do not take that for granted. I do take on this responsibility I wear it respectfully. I wear it humbly, but I take it very, very serious, man. And just, try to be nice to people, man, and kind and try to help where I can help and give a voice to the voiceless. And I just try to do these things, in honor of how I want people to treat others. It's how I want people to treat my sons when they get to school, when they get to high school. How I try to lead by example. And so this is kind of a way to just for me to share what I do. I hope you guys really appreciate these stories, man, because they're really, really, it's not a humble brag at all. It's really just trying to give you perspective of what I'm trying to do as a person and a platform that I have to use to kind of spread this love that I'm trying to, give out and give out to the world, man. I've been in a very, very fortunate position. If I look at who I was some 5, 6, 10 years ago, man, I don't even know how I got here, but I'm happy that I got here. I knew I could get here. It took a lot of people in my life to kind of, keep pushing me forward, my wife included. But I'm so appreciative of the spot that I'm in and the place that I have and the things that I'm able to do for people. So I don't take that lightly. So with that said, man, we're going to get into this show. I got my guest, Wanja. I still love her. .de is her website. Check her out on Instagram, Twitter, or whatnot. But we're gonna get into this interview. I hope you enjoy it. Sit back, buckle up. It's gonna be a dope little hip hop ride. But we doing what we do. BU Podcast, Mike Arrington, in a minute.
You are listening to the BU Podcast with Michael Arrington.
All right, what's good, y'all? BU Podcast, Mike Arrington. We're back. I got my girl, the legend, Wanja, in the building. Let the people know who you are, what you do.
What's up? I'm very honored to be here today. I'm Wanja of I Still Love Her.de. I'm a curator. I am a DJ. I've been in hip hop for a long time. I don't know. I struggle with giving myself titles.
I get it. I mean, we've been affiliated, man, it's been a while. Like, I want to say at least a decade, probably, right?
I was thinking about it earlier, and I was wondering if we've known each other since MySpace, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it was MySpace. So yeah. It's well over a decade then, for sure.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think that's first when we first got connected. I got connected with you via promotion. And just when the internet became a thing, and then MySpace was a real big thing, especially for me in that era. It really kind of helped me branch out to my European audience who I didn't really have contact with up until around MySpace. So that's dope. So it's good to finally, get you in the building and chat. I know we often speak online about different topics and different things. So it's good to kind of get you in a formal setting to really kind of sit down and kind of pick your brain and have a really rich conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. So let me ask you this. So when did you fall in love with hip hop?
I would say I first fell in love with just the music when I was around 5 years old. That's when I remember the first song that I fell in love with. I could have been 6. I don't know. I heard this song on the radio. It was Us 3 Cantaloupe. It's a song from the UK. Yeah. And I recorded that onto a tape on my parents' stereo. And I just know that I listened to that song all the time and it just did something to me. But I would say I had my real falling in love with hip hop happened when I was around 15, when I really discovered the culture and the different elements. and really starting to understand what it is and that it's not just music.
Okay, cool. So during that time, so what was like your favorite era of hip hop?
That's difficult. Like, honestly, I don't really like to pinpoint one era. I mean, I obviously love the 90s. I also have so much appreciation for the 80s because, like, when I really got into hip hop culture, like, I dove into what was going on in the 80s. Like, I asked my parents to get me Wild Style on VHS, and I watched that religiously, and that really gave me such a dope insight on how everything started. So I have a deep appreciation for that era. And then 90s hip hop, is just amazing. But
Right.
for me, also, when I was like 18, 19, I feel like that's an age where you really connect with music, right?
Right.
And that was the early 2000s. So that early 2000s also means a lot to me. And actually, when I DJ, if I'm DJing a party, my favorite thing to play is early 2000s hip hop, because to me, that's like the best shit for a party.
Right.
Like, what will make you dance more than early 2000s?
Right. And that's my era. So big ups to that. But for me, it was like I'm a little older, so I think I fell in love with hip hop probably around the time I heard Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5 and The Message. Not that anything before it wasn't good, but I think that was the song that really, really resonated with me. And then, of course, the Run DMC and all that type of stuff, man, in that era was kind of the era where like I fell in love with hip hop and Yo MTV Raps and all that type of stuff, which was like mid 80s, up until the present era. So to kind of give people some background on like what you do and how we communicate is, you have these very, very rich and important posts on Instagram and on social media. And so in that, sometimes, man, social media can be very, very it can be very ugly. And I'm sure you had to deal with some of that stuff. So let's talk about the misogyny in hip hop and how can we do better to educate artists and fans and people who just love what we love.
I think the problem isn't really hip hop, right? Like, the problem is society as a whole. Like,
Facts.
Hip hop is just a reflection of society. So if society wasn't misogynistic, then hip hop wouldn't be either. So it's a way bigger problem, and especially like speaking today when Roe versus Wade was just overturned.
Right.
It baffles me how misogyny is still so alive and well that the US government is taking reproductive rights away from women. It's insane. But back to hip hop. I understand where it comes from, So I really, I hate it. I hate that it's there. And it doesn't feel good as a woman to read misogynistic comments. And a lot of times the people that are commenting don't even, to them, that's normal. Like, to them, that's normal thinking. To them, that's a normal way of expressing themselves. And they don't even realize that they're being misogynistic, which is not an excuse.
Right.
So sadly, I have gotten used to it. I still see shit and I delete comments a lot. I also block people. Like yesterday, I shared a tweet from Sean King about the overturning.
Right.
And someone responded, "Great news."
Right.
Now, blocked immediately, because I also feel like, honestly, I don't want misogynists following me, because if you're a misogynist, you don't deserve my work.
Right.
Like, you don't deserve to if you don't want women to have these rights, you don't deserve this work coming from a woman. It's very frustrating, honestly. It's also, it feels like such a slow progress.
Right.
I do see progress with the younger generations, which is really nice to see that they aren't repeating the same shit
Right.
that the generations before them did. But it's such a slow progress. And hip hop is, in the hip hop community, unfortunately, it's still such a thing because it's so male dominated,
Right.
So a lot of women kind of refrain from speaking out about these things because you have so many men gatekeeping.
Right. Yeah, it's a male dominated business.
Yeah.
The music business, period. Hip hop is no different. And I think for me, just I always try to maintain a certain level of respect and a certain level of decorum for women in the work that you all do, from every standpoint, from dancers to singers to producers to writers to people who do promotions, PR, the whole thing. So it's always a level of respect that comes with it. We really do appreciate everything that women have done for hip hop. You know what I mean? They may not be in the forefront all the time, but I think the contributions women like yourself make to how hip hop is told, how hip hop is represented, I think goes unnoticed. And I want to be one of those people who, kind of give you guys a platform to kind of really shine and get the, proper respect and credit that you deserve.
Yeah.
So with that said, and so everybody kind of gets some context, you are not from the US. Where are you from exactly? And then kind of where you live and where have you resided?
So originally I'm from Heidelberg, Germany, which some people would say, myself included, that it's the birthplace of German rap. But some other people would contest that, but it's fine. And I've now been living in Berlin for the past, I think, like 8 years.
Okay. So let's talk about European hip hop versus US hip hop, and not on a competitive sense, but perspectives are always different, right? Like you mentioned how the US government, it's always baffling to me kind of how rich European hip hop has always been for artists like myself, especially, people who came out during the late 90s, early 2000s, like myself, Dilated Peoples and Jurassic Fives and all those groups. It's so different for us when we go there. The level of respect and love that you guys and admiration you guys have for us has always been amazing. Why do you think that is? Why do you think a US artists seem to thrive better in Europe than they do in the US?
I think, I'm sure there's a variety of reasons, but I think one is maybe that you're always appreciated more somewhere else, right?
True.
Than where you're from. I think that always happens, even with cities, right?
Right.
Because I think people get spoiled. Like, if an artist is from your city, you're kind of spoiled. You feel like they will always be around. You can always go catch a show at some point. But if someone is coming from overseas, I mean, in Berlin, we're also spoiled because every tour basically has a stop here.
Right.
But still, the chances of seeing an American artist here are lower than seeing them in the US.
Right.
So I think people are just more appreciative in that sense because they feel like, oh, I might not be able to see this person again, so let me go to the show. But also, I'm sure there is something psychologically where knowing that this is not your culture,
Right.
because as Europeans, we 100% always come from an outsider's perspective, right? So even if you're not consciously thinking about that, I think subconsciously, like, you know that.
Right.
And then I feel like you're working a bit harder to be a part of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. I get what you mean.
You know? And then you might be showing more love. I don't know.
Yeah, I felt like I think Buckshot told me years ago, man. He said, when you're from where you're from, you don't get really like the respect until you leave from where you're from. Like the people where you're from kind of always notice who you are because that's where you're from. But like when you step out of that, it's more enticing, right? So I'm from Southern California, so and I came up in the second wave of what I call the second wave of the golden era, so like the late 90s, early 2000s. And so it was so many avenues for artists like myself to really kind of thrive. Like, so you had like the Wake Up Show, and then you had like Fantastic Four and Friday Night Flavors, and you had the joint. You had all these different avenues where artists met. So it was a very, very small community, right? It's a very, very small fraternity of artists who were able to kind of do their thing. And so with that said, when you step away from that, and you go to, say, New York, there's a certain different level of respect I always got from New York, even being from the West Coast and LA, and that whole East Coast, West Coast thing was still a thing when I started rapping. So, but everybody always thought I was from New York, because I got a slight accent, but it's really just based off of how I listened to the music and what my influences were. And so, but the first time I went to Europe was, I think, 2004. And I couldn't even believe the level of respect and love that I got. I didn't even know it existed. You know what I mean? And I remember signing those foreign licensing deals and thinking like, oh, I'm just doing it for the advance. Like nobody's listening to my music outside of where I'm from, right? And so little did I know when MySpace came around and I had a big, big following in Europe. So I know artists like myself has always appreciated it. And I toured there for years. And it's been, I think last time I was there was 2017, I think. And I had planned to do a 20-year reunion for my first album in 2020, but then, we had that pandemic thing. So, I always just found it fascinating, the love and respect that Europe has always had, not even just for hip hop, but just even for a lot of American artists back, even in the 60s, you had the jazz era. I know Quincy Jones speaks about how vibrant it was for artists back then to get the personal respect that they deserve. And it's always been authentic crowds when I've performed out there. So I've always respected that.
You know what? I think it's just a level of admiration, because when you look at, when you're from afar looking at someone doing something that can't be fully recreated here, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, sure, like we have our own hip hop scene and we have our own hip hop artists, and also they have developed their own style of rap music. But still, we're looking at American artists as the originators, right? And so I think there's a level of admiration where in the States, it's just normal, kind of,
Right.
Yeah, that's what we do. Like,
right.
Yeah. And I think that's probably, also genre crossing when a genre has been originated somewhere else. But what you were saying with being appreciated somewhere else, I experienced that. Like, I've been spending a lot of time in South Africa in these past few years. And as a DJ, I'm way more appreciated there than I am here, which is kind of frustrating at times, because it's like, what the fuck?
Right. No, I definitely understand. Like I could walk the streets of LA and nobody gives a damn, but let me go to France and everybody knows who I am. So that I get it. So let's get into mental health in hip hop. I know we briefly had a conversation around the time, I want to say, I think it was Kanye's documentary came out, and Kanye's always a big topic in hip hop when it comes to mental health. I feel like as somebody who is a therapist, I feel like a lot of times some of the issues that artists have, stem from childhood trauma or things of that nature. But I think the music industry as a whole, hip hop in particular, has a difficult time in allowing men in particular to be vulnerable. And I think that leads to a lot of issues and beefs and things that happen. So let me get your thoughts on mental health and hip hop and things of that nature.
I mean, I think it's sad that it's not a bigger topic. I also see progress there. I do see younger artists, and also artists that I didn't expect to talk about these things. I see them talk about it. I see them talk about therapy. I see them talking about meditation and mental health, and that's a beautiful thing. I think once again, that's such a generational thing, because if I look at my parents, right, like the generation my parents are from is a generation that no one talked about mental health, right? And so I think, I don't know how old you are, but I'm guessing we're not too far in age.
Yeah, I'm almost the same age as hip hop. I think hip hop is 2 years older than me.
Okay. I just turned 38. So
yeah, I got 10 years on you. I'll be 48 in October.
Wow, okay. But I think like your generation still has a harder time with that, right? But then of course we're also talking about with hip hop, we're also talking about the Black community, right? And then in the US, we're also talking about the lack of health insurance, Right. So mental health is it's just not accessible for everyone. And that's a big factor that needs to be considered. You can't just tell everyone, oh, you should go to therapy. Someone doesn't have access and can't afford therapy. What are they supposed to do? Like in Germany, like I'm in therapy and it's covered by my health insurance, and that's how it should be. Like if you get a diagnosis, it should be covered. You shouldn't have to spend thousands of dollars just to get better. So, there's a lot of factors, but I do think it's very helpful that you have more artists publicly speaking about it, because it just makes people feel safer in also speaking about what they are experiencing as mental health issues. And
yeah, I think you hit a very, very important point when you talk about access to those types of resources. And the US, for some strange reason, we don't have universal health care. So it's not readily accessible to everybody like it should be. And then what I always found fascinating is that a lot of artists, especially artists that are signed to record labels, they don't have health insurance.
Yeah.
Right. I remember having a conversation with Exhibit one time, and we have children around the same age. And I was working a full-time job while I was still an artist. And so he was talking about how he had to pay out of pocket for his son to be born, and how I had insurance and what the difference was, right? I had to pay a $50 copay, and I think he had to pay some $200,000 or whatever it was. And and you kind of look at the juxtaposition of like, wow, you would think somebody who is as successful as him, and have the opportunities that he's had, that would have like health insurance, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, which is insane, right? But like even some labels, I remember when I was signed to a label, that was one of the fights that I had. Like, oh, you got to pay for healthcare for this or healthcare for that, or you pay something. You know what I mean? Like, you just can't just give me in advance, send me out on the road, send me out on planes, and send me out in different foreign countries.
You might get injured.
Right. I might get hurt. I might get sick. You know what I'm saying? And like, nobody can cover that. Like, so I always found that like fascinating to just to really understand that. So when you add on issues of, you have people like being on tour, being an artist is not as easy as everybody thinks. Like it sounds great, right? But try to do 30 shows in 32 days in 32 different countries. It's a lot of work. You know what I mean? And so, and with the rigor of what that comes with, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's mentally draining. You got to, you know, shake hands and take pictures and you know, and do interviews, and it's a lot of work. And that takes some level of, you know, mental stability to be able to handle that.
100%.
So I think it's something that we I hope in the future, like you said, younger artists are getting they're more in tune to it. I think it is generational too. People from my generation and older, they don't want it because it's a level of vulnerability that they don't want to, they think that they don't have, but like they don't understand that vulnerability is really a superpower.
But I think it's also important to note how misogyny really plays a big part in that, right? Like how the patriarchy plays a big part in that, because that's really why there's this idea that men have to be strong, men shouldn't show their emotions, and men can't be sad or hurt or scared, and men have to keep up this facade, right? And as long as that's being fostered in the way that it has been, then because men are humans, right? Like, why wouldn't you have the same issues as women? Like, why wouldn't you also have trauma? Like, you deal with the exact same things, but then you're constantly being told that you have to suppress everything. You have to suppress all those emotions, and you have to be strong, and you have to function. And of course, you're not going to admit that you might need therapy. If that's, you know, if you're stuck in that mindset that you have to be this strong man.
Right.
And that's why I think it gets so lost that fighting the patriarchy is not just for the benefit of women. Like, it's also for the benefit of men. So men don't have to keep trying to live up to these insane standards that are it's impossible to live up to these standards and be okay.
Right. Yeah, no, it's like you there's a sign of weakness if you go to therapy, right? And so even when I do couples therapy, and there's always a level of, you know, I don't want to be here from the man, right? It's like, is therapy stupid? You know what I'm saying? Like, we should be able to work it out, right? But what people don't understand is that, like, sometimes hearing yourself out loud or hearing yourself through the lens of a third party is so helpful, right? Even if it's just like a friend or, you know, whatever the case may be. And so I think that showing vulnerability has always been taboo, especially with men, you know what I'm saying, in American culture. So eventually, hopefully, we get to a point or place of maturity where we understand that, you know, even Superman needed help. You know what I'm saying? Even Iron Man needed the rest of the Avengers, right? So every superhero has a weakness. So why are men any different, right? And so I think it's important that we continue the legacy of letting people, giving people permission to feel and being vulnerable. So I think that's helpful. So let me ask you this. So other genres like rock and heavy metal and jazz, for example, kind of covet their pioneers. Hip hop kind of not, right? Or at least in the US. So why do you think that is? Why do you think like groups like U2 are still selling out stadiums where, you know, groups like Run DMC hardly ever perform anymore?
Well, I mean, hip hop is still so young, right? That we're only now getting to the point where our heroes are getting up in that age, right? So it's like an unprecedented thing. Like, it's not something we've been practicing or like know what to do with.
Right.
For such a long time, hip hop was viewed as like a young people's thing.
Right.
Because it also was, because the culture was so young.
Right.
And then it was always like, oh, the older people, you know, they don't know what's hot, you know, and then you have the generational divide. I think like now is the time where we have heroes that are aging, I think now is the time to make an example out of that and take care of them. You know, like
right.
I've seen a few like Drink Champs episodes where they were talking about a union, you know, how hip hop needs a union
Right.
to take care of hip hop artists that can't work anymore, you know?
Right.
Because that's really, hip hop culture really lacks that, because what the fuck? Like, these people built this culture for us, and
right.
now they don't have money to live. That's
right. Yeah, it's one of my like passion projects. Like, I'm working on like workshops to kind of to get some of the pioneers of hip hop like work, right? Like, I know I talk to Chuck D a lot, and he sends me a lot of different, you know, what we call old school or pioneers of hip hop, and just kind of getting them a platform. Like, a lot of them don't even really know how to get their music online, or a lot of them don't even have access to their masters to be able to sell, right? And some of them are still contractually obligated, you know what I mean, for record deals they had in the 80s where they can't even perform certain songs, right? So there's a lot of miseducation that goes into what goes on in the music business too. And I think somebody does need to, you know, give them an opportunity to make different money, kind of like how they do athletes. So like old school athletes, they always have a, you know, convention to go to speak to younger athletes, right? You know, and they make money off of signing autographs and so on and so forth. So I think that's important as well.
But you know,
go ahead.
No, I think what also plays a part is that we also have kind of dropped the ball a bit with the each one teach one thing, right? Like the generational divide doesn't just come from the young generation. It also comes from the old generation.
Right.
You know, like, because if an older person constantly tells you like, you don't know what you're talking about, this is not hip hop, this is not the real deal, like, we did it way better than you. Like, they're not going to give a fuck about us.
Exactly.
They're going to be like, shut your old ass up.
Right. Old and bitter.
So I think that's definitely a thing where we just need more, you know, outreach between the generations, and just show each other more love and appreciation, and understand, like, they doing it differently, and that's okay.
Right. It's okay. Like, you know, like I had a chance to meet DMC from Run DMC, man, and the level of respect he had for what I've been able to do. You know, I had to pay it back. I was like, bro, it's because of you that I do this. Like, if it wasn't for I'm the king of rock, there is none higher, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Just so, you know, I always have to, you know, give respect back. So last question. So if you had a chance to either work on or hear a dream project with some artists, dead or alive, who would that or who would they be?
Oh man, Jay-Z, 100%. Like, Jay-Z is my GOAT. Right. So, okay. Jay-Z and Biggie, because, you know, they wanted to do something like they wanted to do a project. That
would have been dope. I would have loved to hear the commission.
100%. Yeah,
I know for me, I would have loved to hear like Black Thought, Pharaoh Monch, and Royce the 5'9" over Dilla production.
I mean, any Dilla production, like, I can bring Dilla back for this, like 100%.
Right.
I would have Hove, Biggie, and Dilla in the studio.
That would be insane.
Then I can die happily.
Insane. All right. Well, all right, I'll give you one last curveball question. So if you can have dinner with 5 people, dead or alive, who would they be?
5? That's a lot. I'm an introvert. I like one-on-one. I'll be overwhelmed if I'm
you get 5 separate dinners with.
Okay, that's much better. Okay, Jay-Z, definitely.
Okay.
Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Dilla, for sure. Who else? There are so many people, man. I mean, I kind of would love to talk to Herc just to like hear the stories.
Hear the stories, right? Yeah, I'm sure he's got amazing stories.
Yeah. What is that? Is that 4?
That's 4.
That's 4. Okay. Like Busta, because Busta always has great stories.
It's great. His Drink Champs was hilariously funny to me.
It was. Yeah.
It was dope. But yeah, just let me give you your flowers now. I appreciate all the stuff that you do for hip hop, all the stuff you do online, man, all the stuff you do for artists. Keep doing what you do, man. Keep letting it shine. Keep being you. You have amazing content and stories you bring to the game. So we appreciate everything you do. I appreciate you coming through, and let's talk again soon.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Everyone, make sure if you don't follow me at istalover.de on Instagram, that's the most important one, and reproductive rights for everyone. Indeed.
So I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon.
Yes. Peace.
You are listening to the BU Podcast with Michael Arrington.
That's right, we're back. BU Podcast. Mike Arrington, man, that was my guest, Wanja from istilllover.de. Please check her out on Instagram. Her posts are really, really rich and really, really vital. Hope you enjoyed our conversation. I really feel like, having a woman's perspective when it comes to hip hop is vital. The work that women do in hip hop at every level is important, but I don't think they get enough flowers for their contribution to what we do in this thing called hip hop. It's a very, very male dominated, male chauvinist environment, man, and they have to endure so much, but they also, contribute so much, people like her and, the other, writers and curators and aficionados and radio personalities and DJs and MCs and producers and DJs and whatnot, man. I think their contribution is vital, and I don't think they get enough shine. So I'm gonna use my platform to give them that shine. So I appreciate her coming through, man, having a conversation with me. Even with the 9-hour time difference, we made it work. But hope you enjoyed that, man. Trying to do some different things, winding down the very, very first season, the inaugural season of the BU Podcast. I think I'm getting better each time. But let me know how you feel. Let me know how I can make it better. Let me know what you want to hear or who you want to hear or the topics you want to hear. Most of the feedback I've been getting is people have been telling me they want me to do more content about me or more stories about me. And I'm down to do that. I'm really not good at self-promotion. So, but I'll do the best I can, man, to try to bring on different content and have different conversations, important conversations that are helpful. I want to do more stuff about sextortion and social media and how young men can carry themselves better when, around women and give parents advice about their children and how to raise teenagers and things of that nature. So I want to be able to be a vehicle for people to come to or go to for advice or for information. So I want to be a resource however I can be, but I appreciate everybody tuning in, man. This is, coming down a home stretch of this first season, man. I'm really, really proud of the content I've been able to do, but, I want to do more. I want to be better. I want to continue to get better. I want to continue to grow this. So I appreciate those who've been tapping in. Please spread the word. Please let everybody know. BU Podcast, all digital platforms. Your man, Mike Arrington. Another one in the can. Be easy. Love y'all.
You are listening to the BU Podcast with Michael Arrington.